Classes began at Saint-Noel Academy, and Mia, confident from her past, bragged about her knowledge. However, she realized she had a politician's trait of conveniently forgetting things. In a panic, she asked her maid Anne to join in her class for help, which made Anne find a stronger resolution to follow Mia. Later, Mia visited the equestrian club to learn horseback riding, fearing she might need it to escape from the future revolutionary army, and went on a horseback date with Prince Abel. Mia got complacent and fell. Abel caught her, leading to an awkward moment where Mia teased him, unaware of his feelings and hers, thinking he was just more delicate than her.
For the record, Mia was not a loner. Suitable for the status of princess of the powerful empire of Tearmoon, she was frequently surrounded by an entourage of other girls. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the largest faction in the class, although their number is smaller than in the previous timeline because Mia turned away anybody who said anything bad about Anne. Speaking of factions, it might be beneficial to describe the makeup of her class, in which Mia's group reigns supreme. Whether it's club activities, a common hometown, or a variety of connections, students act together with a like-minded peers or with like-minded people to form groups or cliques. Obviously, there will always be those who belong to no group, those who fail to find their clique, and who would inevitably be given the label of loner. There was such a girl in Mia's class. Her name was Chloe Forkroad, a shy girl with light black hair and thick glasses. Chloe sided deeply and sadly among the students who were delighted with their end-of-class freedom. Chloe comes from a family of merchants who ran a fairly large business. Both her father and mother were good people who knew their way around people, and before further parlaying their accomplishments into a noble title, they started from a small caravan corp and eventually established a company. Their daughter, however, had a much more quiet personality by nature. She was more interested in books than in conversations. Her parents' efforts to bring her along to the different places during their travels to meet different people only worsened her introversion. Fearing for her future, her parents expended a large amount of donations and connections to enroll Chloe at Saint-Noel's Academy, the best academy of the continent. However, what awaited Chloe at the academy was the harsh reality of nobility and their obsession with lineage and tradition. As a newcomer family who bought their title with gold, she was considered an outcast. Thus, Chloe started living a lonely school life. For those who didn't fit in class, the hardest part is the break time. Chloe was always worried about how to spend time socializing with friends all by herself. To this end, her biggest help were the books she brought from her parents' house. Books, which are a collection of knowledge, are originally expensive products that are traded at high prices. Even Chloe's families, operating as Forkroad & Co., has been handling it as a main product for a long time. Having grown up around them, she developed a love for books and brought many with her to the academy. However, this is the last one. What am I gonna do? Every day she has been spending her breaks reading. It was no wonder that she would quickly exhaust her supply. The book she was reading had less than 20 pages left. No matter how slowly she reads it, she will finish it reading by tomorrow. Maybe I should try talking to someone else? No, that's absolutely impossible. I should have done so when school started. Now that everyone has formed their own groups, it's way too late. I wish the earth would swallow me up. While thinking about it, Chloe's face sank to her desk. She wasn't sad. At least she didn't think she was. Nevertheless, her eyes welled up with tears. That was when she heard a voice.
"Excuse me."
Not realizing she was being spoken to, Chloe simply sighed and continued to press her face into her arms.
"Excuse me, do you have a moment?"
Chloe slowly looked up. She blinked her tears away and she could see a figure of a girl appearing. Chloe was so surprised that she was frozen for a moment. It was the kind of shock as if the gloomy loner that nobody likes was being addressed by the coolest kid in class. Because actually, that was what's happening. It was the princess of the great Tearmoon Empire, champion of the class, the cream of the crop of the most famous one in the grade. It was none other than Princess Mia Luna Tearmoon! Words failed her as she struggled to speak. Meanwhile, Mia was looking at the book on her desk.
"What are you reading?"
An illustrated book of plants in the desert. It tells you how to get their water and other stuff. For Chloe, this was the first time that anyone had a decent conversation with her. In her thirst for interaction, she took advantage of it and started to lean further and further forward, speaking with the frantic intensity of someone who was terrified of the slightest lull in their dialogue. After hearing the explanation, a frown creased on Mia's brow.
"Is it interesting for you?"
Yes, actually, It might not be very interesting for you to read. I mean, I find it interesting, but other people might not find it interesting.
You seem to be reading books a lot. Do you read any storybooks?
Yes, I also read them. I like the love story between a prince and a princess in a small country, but I have just read all the books I brought with me, And that was when, for some reason, a glint of excitement appeared in Mia's eyes, and she stared at Chloe like a hungry cat that had just spotted a mouse. The sight spoke Chloe a little, and she jerked back, only to find that her arm did not move with her. Her eyes drifted towards her shoulder, down to her wrist, over a pair of hands that were grabbed firmly around her, and finally up to her captor's face. Mia beamed.
I was looking for someone like you. Would you like to be friends with me?
That was the last thing Chloe expected to hear.
Bingo! It seems that she's exactly the kind of person I thought she'd be.
Hearing Chloe talking and ranting filled Mia with a smug sense of satisfaction. Mia approached her, of course, not because Chloe was always alone, nor did she approach her out of sympathy. The reason Mia noticed her was just because she was reading a book by herself every break. Mia had reached a point where she wanted someone to talk with about the book she had been reading. That's right. Mia craved a book buddy. Earlier that day, Mia was lying on her bed in her room, reading the manuscript sent by Anne's sister, Ellis.
Oh, it's very interesting to read it again properly like this.
The story was still as far as Mia knew from the previous timeline, but the details were subtly different from what she once heard from Anne. There was a fresh excitement in reading the same story with a different lens. Mia hummed happily, her cheeks propped on her palms and her feet kicking the bed behind her. She flipped through the pages. As a princess, her behavior was unbefitting. Anne usually reproached her, but this time she just watched over her. You see, Mia, as a princess of the Tearmoon Empire, is in a position where she usually has to watch the way she acts. This puts her in a lot of pressure, so Anne wants her to feel as free as possible in her room. To the rest of the world, this kind of treatment would be better described as spoiling her. Eventually, after reading the manuscript to the end, Mia sighed with satisfaction.
Thank you, Anne. These are most enjoyable to read.
While returning the manuscript, Mia tilted her head.
By the way, how are things at home? Is Elise okay?
For Mia, this manuscript was one of her great pleasures. Elise needs to be helped to continue and finish writing the story. Thank you for your concern. Things at home are fine and Elise is doing well. Anne replied with a cheerful smile. She didn't have to lie or hide anything at all.
That's good to hear. If anything happens, tell me right away. Elise is one of my own.
Then she glanced at the draft and let out a sigh.
But isn't it sad? We're the only ones able to read this.
The thing about book lovers is that if they read an interesting book, they'll want to share it with someone. Anne might be a good book buddy, but unfortunately, Anne doesn't seem to be very interested in this kind of story. It seems that she's reading it because it was written by her sister and not really because she is interested in it.
Now that I think about it, this story is quite different from the story I heard when I was in the dungeons. I wonder if Anne was just skimming through most of these.
However, Mia also rejects the idea of sharing the story to her close group of followers. They would just shower it with praise. What they couldn't provide was the kind of meaty explorative discussion about the work that Mia truly craved.
I wonder if anyone is suitable.
While thinking about this, Mia found her, Chloe, an unrivaled book lover who reads books every break.
She's willing to sacrifice time she could use to talk to her friends for reading instead. She must have such a deep love of books, all kinds of books.
Actually, Chloe was reading books because it's awkward to be alone, and she doesn't like books as much as Mia thinks.
Would you like to become friends with me?
Eh? Chloe blinked her eyes. Then she blinked some more. It didn't help. She still couldn't process what she had just heard. Oh, but why? Chloe was very confused. She couldn't fathom why Mia asked her that suddenly. After all, she's the princess of the great empire and the most influential person in this class. Moreover, her friends and followers are bigwigs. Included in those are the gorgeous princes of Songland and Remno, Prince Ian and Prince Abel, who have been longed for by girls in the academy. She also has a close relationship with the name at the top of the school, the daughter of the Duke of Beluga, Saint Rafina. Mia was someone who was associated with the cream of the crop, those who sat at the very top of the Saint-Noel Academy food chain. So, what was she doing talking to the bottom feeder like Chloe? She had no reason to, unless... Then, something occurred to Chloe, and it all made sense. There was actually one possible reason. Pity. Did she notice that I was alone, and she felt sorry for me? Chloe knew that Mia was also called the Saint of the Empire. She assumed that she was full of compassion. However, if she is, then I don't like it. The thought of being pitied made Chloe feel very miserable. There was nothing pleasant about being seen as pitiable. That must be why.
Because you like books. In fact, there is something I want you to read.
Chloe was confused by Mia's unexpected answer. She looked at the petite princess, her mouth agape and mind blank.
So, if you'd like, would you become my book buddy?
It was 10 years later that Chloe, who succeeded the company, focused on publishing books and established a huge publishing company that deals with multiple countries. All of her books always sold out, but it's notorious that the most famous one came from her former classmate, the Imperial Princess, Mia Luna Tearmoon.
What? A swordsmanship tournament?
That day, Mia was enjoying lunch in the cafeteria surrounded by her usual group of friends. Yes, the boy had been talking up a storm. The academy is apparently helping to host it, and it's taking place during the last week before summer vacation or something.
Didn't you know? I don't remember. My head.
As soon as she tried to recall past memories of the event, she was struck with a terrible headache.
Swordsmanship tournament. Alone.
Words flashed anonymously through her mind. Something about them made her feel like these were memories better left on Earth. So, it seems customary to prepare a bento for the boy you like at the swordsmanship tournament.
But we were wondering if your highness has already placed an order. A bento!
A scene from her memories burst vividly into her mind. The memory of the previous timeline in front of her, a gorgeous bento that she ordered enthusiastically.
I'll let him say that he won the championship thanks to the lunchbox I gave him.
She had it all planned out and was ready to go. Her enthusiasm, however, was immediately dosed with a bucket of cold water when Prince Ian adamantly refused to accept her bento. She couldn't tell anyone around her about that incident. Thus, she had no choice but to eat it alone, while crying, alone in her room.
It was very painful.
Suddenly, a single tear ran down Mia's cheek. Your Highness, what's wrong? Why are you suddenly crying? Someone, give me a handkerchief. Seeing Mia shed tears silently sent all the girls into a fit of panic. After wiping her tears with her fingertips, Mia smiled and said to her entourage,
Oh no, it's nothing. Thank you for telling me about it. Unlike the stupid Prince Sion, Prince Abel is a gentleman, so he will eat it properly. I'm sure of it.
The situation is different from that time, and moreover, Mia is now a bit different from the previous timeline.
For the time being, I should make him promise in advance that he'll accept my bento.
Yes, Mia version 2.0 came with an important upgrade. She now has a little common sense. Mia knows that the other person also has their own circumstances. For example, it was possible that he was going to prepare lunch himself that day, rendering Mia's effort extraneous. That is why it is necessary to tell him in advance that she will bring him lunch.
I should go and tell him as soon as possible.
After school that day, Mia went to Abel. This day was also the meeting day of the equestrian club, so it was easy to find him.
Prince Abel.
Oh, Princess Mia, are you planning on practicing horse riding today? Abel said that when she saw Mia dressed in a dignified riding suit, horse riding waistcoat, and long pants. Malon Senpan praised you. He thought it was the whim of a princess, but he said you were serious about it. Club activities basically require free participation. It is necessary to come every day. And Saint-Noel Academy is a school with many free-spirited aristocrats. The frequency in which Mia showed up was, if anything, an oddity. She came every day, but to be honest, she would have rather spent the time lounging in her room. She was only there because it is essential to learn horse riding skills in order to secure a means of escape. Anyways, for the time being, this is the only horse available right now, but would you like to ride it with me? With that said, Abel took off his gloves and extended his hand to Mia.
Really? I do think I'd like that.
Mia reached out to take Abel's hand.
My.
What's wrong?
Your palm is much firmer, isn't it?
After stroking Abel's palm, Mia looked up at Abel with a smile. I guess. It's probably because, there's a swordsmanship tournament soon, and I have been training.
I see. You're doing your best.
It occurred to her that the skin of the palms of the knights in the Empire were all similarly calloused. In front of her, Abel looks like a boy who still has innocence, but somehow, she noticed a certain toughness in his face. Mia's heart began pounding. She hopped on the horse. Then, Mia slowly opened her mouth and asked him with a timid voice.
Prince Abel, on the day of the swordsmanship tournament.
Yeah? What about it?
Is there anyone who has promised you a bento?
No, not really. His response gave Mia a wave of relief.
That's perfect. If that is so, would you like it if I brought you a bento?
For me?
Yes, I will do my best to bring you something that will help you win.
At this time, Mia was relieved. she had unfortunately neglected to consider one issue. This negligence was brought about her relief. Feeling safe in the knowledge that she wouldn't suffer last life fate of a lonesome lunch, she let down her guard. Furthermore, her newly acquired common sense was not substantial enough to alert her to this oncoming pitfall. For most people, the problem was obvious. Requiring no more than a moment's thought, for Mia, it never even crossed her mind. Ventas had to be ordered, and orders had to be placed in advance. Blissfully ignorant of the fact that every store in town would be swamped with work on the day of the tournament, and therefore stop accepting orders a week in advance, Mia smiled happily to herself as she imagined a future that would never come to pass.
Oh, how wonderful. I can hardly wait.
This is it for this video. We will continue with the story of the Guillotine Princess in the next episode. This was Brian and Marco from Jobless Weebs. Matinee.